The river was no longer a river. It was a roaring wall of water, tearing trees from the banks and smashing rocks together like toys. Rain hammered the forest, and the sky felt close enough to fall. In the middle of this chaos, a man stood frozen on the muddy shore, his heart pounding as he stared at the water. Something small and fragile was trapped near the edge, caught between swirling branches and crashing waves. A baby, wrapped in torn cloth, crying weakly, its voice almost lost in the storm. Just as the man stepped forward, a gray shape moved from the shadows of the forest. A wolf emerged, her fur soaked and clinging to her thin body, her eyes burning with fear and determination. She reached the water first, teeth gripping the cloth gently, pulling the baby onto a half-submerged rock. The current slammed against her legs, but she did not move. She lowered her body, shielding the child with her own, growling softly, not in anger, but in warning and desperation. The man raised his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. He had seen wolves before, but never like this. This was not a hunter protecting prey, this was a mother protecting life. Their eyes met across the raging water. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The wolf did not attack. She did not run. Instead, she watched him closely, judging every breath he took. The water surged higher, ripping the rock from beneath her paws. The wolf staggered, almost losing her footing. The baby cried louder now, and something changed in the wolf's eyes. Fear turned into a silent plea. The man understood without words. He stepped into the freezing water, pain shooting through his legs as the current fought him. Every step felt like the river was trying to pull him under. When he reached them, the wolf did not bare her teeth. She stood still, trembling, her body a barrier but her eyes full of trust she could barely afford. Slowly, the man reached out and lifted the baby into his arms. The wolf did not let go at first. Her teeth still held the cloth, as if the river itself might steal the child away. Then, gently, she released it. For one brief second, her nose touched the baby's forehead. Then she stepped back. The man turned and fought his way to the shore, holding the child high as the water raged around him. When he finally collapsed on solid ground, breathless and shaking, he looked back. The wolf stood on the rock, watching until she was sure the baby was safe. Only then did she disappear into the stormy forest. That night, as the rain slowly faded, the man realized he had witnessed something the world rarely sees, a moment where fear, instinct, and trust crossed paths. In the heart of chaos, a wild wolf had believed in a human, and that belief had saved a life. Morning came slowly, as if the world itself was exhausted from the night's violence. The storm had passed, but the forest still dripped with its memory. Broken branches lay scattered like fallen soldiers, and the river, though calmer, continued to move with a dark, heavy strength. The man sat near a small fire on the riverbank, the rescued baby wrapped tightly in a dry jacket, sleeping at last. Every few minutes, he looked toward the trees, half expecting to see those watchful eyes again. He could not forget the wolf. Her image stayed with him more clearly than the storm, the way she had stood between him and the child, not with hatred, but with a fierce, aching resolve. He had carried the baby through the night to the nearest ranger cabin, and help had come just before dawn. The child was alive, warm, and safe. Yet in the man's chest, relief was mixed with a strange sense of responsibility, as if something unfinished still tied him to the forest. As the sun climbed higher, he walked back toward the river, following. Faint tracks pressed into the wet soil. They were large, powerful, and purposeful. Wolf tracks. They led along the bank, then into the trees, then back again, as if their owner had been circling, unable to leave. The man felt a tightening in his throat. She had not simply vanished into the storm. She had stayed nearby. A soft movement caught his attention. Between the trunks, the wolf stood once more. In daylight she looked different, smaller than he remembered, her ribs faintly visible beneath her damp fur. One of her legs bore a fresh wound, darkened with dried blood, likely from the rocks or broken wood the river had thrown at her. She did not approach, but she did not flee either. Her eyes were fixed on his hands, searching. Slowly, the man knelt. He placed a piece of cloth on the ground, the same cloth the baby had been wrapped in. The wolf's ears lifted. She took a cautious step forward, then another. Her gaze softened, and for the first time, her body relaxed. She sniffed the cloth, recognizing the scent she had guarded so fiercely. A low sound escaped her throat, not a growl, not a howl, something closer to grief and relief intertwined. The man spoke quietly, his voice steady, though his heart raced. He did not use words of command or fear. He spoke as one would speak to another soul. He told her the child was alive. He told her the storm was over. He told her she had done something brave beyond measure. Of course, she did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. She stepped back, sat down, and lowered her head. For a long moment, they shared the silence of the forest. No river roared now. No rain fell. Only the sound of breathing, human and wolf, existed between them. Then the wolf stood, met his eyes one last time, and turned toward the deeper woods. This time, her steps were slow but certain. As she disappeared among the trees, the man felt something heavy lift from his chest. Trust had been given, and trust had been honored. In a world so often divided by fear, a wild creature and a human had understood each other without force, without words. And that quiet understanding lingered in the forest long after the wolf was gone. Days passed, but the forest did not forget what had happened. Word spread quickly beyond the riverbank, carried by voices and screams instead of wind. The story of a wolf standing in raging water, refusing to release a helpless baby, reached towns, cities, and faraway countries. People watched the shaky rescue footage recorded by a ranger's camera, replaying the moment where fear turned into trust. Many could not believe it was real, yet no one could deny the truth in the wolf's eyes. The man was asked again and again to tell what he had felt in that moment. Each time, he struggled to find the right words. He said it was not courage that moved him forward, but responsibility. He said the wolf did not look at him as an enemy, but as a last hope. His simple explanation only made the story stronger. Scientists, wildlife experts, and journalists all tried to explain it, but their theories felt small compared to what people felt when they watched the scene unfold. Across the world, messages poured in. Some called it a miracle. Others said it was proof that kindness was older than fear. Children drew pictures of the wolf and the man standing together in the storm. Artists painted murals of a gray figure protecting a tiny life against dark waters. For many, the story became a symbol of trust between the wild and the human, of instinct guided by compassion instead of violence. In the forest, life continued quietly. Rangers reported seeing the wolf again from a distance. She moved carefully now, her injured leg healing slowly. She avoided people, as wolves do, but she no longer fled in panic at the scent of humans. Sometimes she would stop at the edge of a clearing, watching from the shadows, calm but alert. It was as if something within her had shifted, leaving behind a memory stronger than fear. The baby recovered fully. Adopted by a loving family, the child grew surrounded by a story that would one day be told with gentle care. They called it a miracle, but they also spoke of the wolf with respect, not fantasy. The man visited the child once, standing quietly at the crib, remembering the weight of that small life in his arms and the eyes that had trusted him with it. What touched the world most was not the storm or the danger, but the choice made in its heart. A wild animal had trusted a human, and a human had honored that trust. In a time when the world felt divided and loud, this single moment reminded millions that understanding does not always begin with words. Sometimes, it begins with a shared risk, a silent promise, and the courage to believe in one another. As attention slowly faded and new stories replaced old headlines, the forest remained unchanged in its quiet rhythm. Snow came early that year, covering the scars left by the flood. The river shrank back into its banks, flowing calmly as if it had never raged. Yet something invisible lingered in the air, a subtle shift that only those who spent their lives close to nature could sense. Rangers spoke of it in low voices, saying the wolves behaved differently now, more cautious, yet less hostile, as if a boundary had softened. The man returned to the forest often, though he never searched for the wolf directly. He walked the familiar paths, repaired damaged signs, and helped restore the land after the flood. Sometimes, while standing at the river's edge, he felt watched, not with fear, but with recognition. On a distant ridge or between the trees, a gray shape would appear briefly, always far enough to remain wild, always close enough to be real. No sound passed between them, yet something unspoken was acknowledged. Winter was harsh. Food grew scarce, and the wolf pack struggled. Tracks told stories in the snow, long journeys, careful hunts, moments of exhaustion. One evening, during a patrol, the man found a deer carcass left untouched near the forest boundary, placed in the open where it could not have been hidden by chance. Wolves do not give gifts, the rangers said. And yet, no other explanation felt right. He stood there for a long time, snow falling softly around him, understanding that gratitude does not always follow rules. As months passed, the wolf's wound healed completely. She ran with strength again, leading her pack through valleys and frozen streams. But she carried a memory that shaped her choices. When storms came, she guided the pack away from rising waters. When human scent drifted on the wind, she chose distance over aggression. Experience had taught her that danger and safety could come from unexpected places. The man, too, was changed. He spoke less and listened more, to the river, to the forest, to the quiet lessons hidden in ordinary moments. He no longer believed that humans stood above nature, nor that nature existed only in opposition to them. He had seen something rare, a line crossed not by force, but by trust. And once crossed, it could never fully be erased. In the stillness of late winter, when the forest seemed to hold its breath, two lives moved forward on separate paths, human and wolf, forever altered by a single moment in a storm. They would never stand side by side again, but the bond forged in chaos endured, silent and strong, woven into the living memory of the land itself.